Thanks, Jenny. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're really happy to be here to talk about affordable housing and housing issues.
So important. So glad to have you
not
guys
just
here.
in St. Johns County, but throughout Northeast Florida.
Wonderful.
And we have one of the real, true pioneers and advocates when it comes to housing and housing affordability, Bill Lazar, Executive Director of the St. Johns Housing Partnership.
Welcome, Bill.
Bill, I'm sure everybody
Thank you
in
for
the
this
world,
opportunity.
I'm sure everybody in the world knows you, but tell a bit about your background and how you got to SJHP.
Mike calls me a pioneer because I've been stumbling through this for the last 32 years. But we started the housing partnership here about 24 years ago. And our primary activity at the time was helping to improve substandard housing that people own. And most of it was our low-income seniors. It still is. The folks who worked hard all their lives, were able to buy a house, and then just as they retired didn't have a lot of means to take care of it, or they lost a partner and half the income made it hard to take care of repairs. So we're very similar to Habitat in the sense that we'll use volunteers in addition to our own construction crews to go out and try and improve homes. And a lot of, my job these days is just hunting partnerships, funds that can help us fix up homes. We partner with the county and with the state. We have a variety of housing programs that really help impact. We work on 100 to 200 homes a year, but we've got probably 400 or 500 households on a waiting list just because there's so many people that need help making their homes decent, safe, and sanitary.
Let's go through some of the services that the St. Johns Housing Partnership offers, and there's an array of things that you do on the housing advocate side. And to begin with, we'll talk about some of the rehab stuff you do, the ramps and things that
we've tried to slowly expand, and usually we look at it is if there's a gap in housing services, can we get involved somehow in providing it? Our home repair projects are the easiest way to get community volunteers involved. We just did a presentation 2 weeks ago to Viv Hellwig's group at Vested Metals. They want a community service project for their employees, so they're going to come out in June and help either build a ramp or work on someone's home. Wheelchair ramps are sort of one of our signature things that it's great for a group of volunteers. We've got a group of men from Trinity Episcopal Parish. They've been coming out once a month for almost 20 years now. And we've got a great group from Creekside High School. Kevin Davenport is the instructor out there, and he's actually brought his students out, had them in the architect class. They'll design the ramp and then they'll come out and actually build it. And they've actually helped us raise money for it because with the rising cost of lumber, our costs for just materials on a ramp have gone from $1,500 to almost $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 depending on the size of the ramp. So the rehab stuff that's really what I think gets people initially involved, just because in some cases they think of it as it's my grandparents living like this, what can I do to help them? And we'll orchestrate the whole event. We'll plan it, we'll do the material takeoff, we'll prep the house for the volunteers to show up, and then basically our goal is to send them home at the end of the day dirty and tired.
Yeah, and some of the repairs you do on homes are for the elderly and the moderate low income. They can range from what to what on some of the repairs.
A lot of it depends on the funds that we have, and as in the nonprofit world, your funding goes up and down from year to year. It's you never know for sure, but we work on an average of $5,000 or $6,000 a house. Some homes may get $30,000 or $40,000 worth of work. It depends on what we can qualify them for. The county right now has got some of the HUD disaster funds from Hurricane Matthew. And those are actually helping families that have been waiting since Hurricane Matthew to get their home repaired. And in that case, you're dealing with sometimes $60,000 or $80,000 worth of work just trying to bring the house back to normal.
So to qualify, do they go through the county or they contact you directly?
They call us at 824-0902. A lot of times we end up having put people on a waiting list just because of the volume of work. But we also are sensitive to, is there something that's a real crisis? If there's something sparking in the house, we want to at least try and figure out what to keep it from catching fire. Roofs are a growing problem, and we're seeing that even more. With this new, the whole insurance debate going on in the state right now, where they're talking about possibly requiring homeowners to replace their roof after 10 years to keep their insurance. That's going to have a huge impact on someone on a fixed income. Just in addition to just finding the workforce that can do that volume of roofs in any kind of a timely manner.
St. John's Housing Partnership does a great job on the repair rehab side, creating ramps for those who need them. But you also have a counseling service too, which is has some busy times here the last couple of years.
We started our housing counseling program about 15 years ago, and it actually grew out of, we would go out and fix up an elderly person's home, really bring it back up to speed, get a group of volunteers to paint it, and then they'd have some kind of predatory lender show up and say, oh, did you know that your house is worth more and we can get you some money? And the seniors had no idea. Plus the thought of $5,000 or $10,000 cash was a huge incentive. So our housing counselors, the county funded it to get it started, and we were able to help review someone's loan terms. We spent a lot of time just doing basic financial literacy, helping someone come up with a budget. We're building new homes now for local families, and a lot of times you've got to sit and work at your budget for a year or two just to kind of get your debt cleaned up before we can get you to the bank. Our our housing counselors spend a lot of time doing foreclosure modifications, which has been their primary business for about the last 8 years. And even now we're seeing, a lot of seniors, as we keep talking about our population aging in place. Well, you've got seniors, if one of the two passes on and their income is reduced, they've still got the same mortgage. And so sometimes we're able to go back to the bank with that person and say, the household has less income, we verified it, here's what they need, can we modify this and somehow just to get them back to where they can stay current. And there have been some federal programs that have been helping with that. They kind of have gone back and forth during COVID. But our housing counselors are basically there to try and keep track of all those and then help people navigate that whole process.
I think probably during COVID and the height of the pandemic, that this is probably a very busy office for the St. John's Housing.
They were, and especially because a lot of these various housing programs and everything else rely on some kind of a web portal, which is not the easiest thing for a low-income family or especially a senior to navigate. And if you live in a community that's got poor bandwidth, it's even harder to try and do it off your phone or something. So we would have people call us, send us stuff. We would help upload the bank statements, whatever else. We'd kind of do the due diligence. You need all these 5 things. When you get these 5 things together, we'll send it off and we'll help you talk to whoever it is to try and make sure the application got processed properly.
In the coming months, we'll be talking about featuring some success stories, not only from the housing counseling, but also from the rehab and repair services that you do on behalf of members of the community. But let's talk about the construction side of St. John's Housing Partnership. I know you do construction and create homes for both low income and moderate income families. So
it's traditionally the housing partnership has always looked at the idea of trying to help people with either new rental opportunities or new home building. So we look at both of those, and each one is a different solution in terms of what we can build or what we can find, either a piece of property to develop or a house to fix up or something we can build new. A lot of times it ends up being just as much a question of what can someone afford and what can we match up to their income.
Jenny, we're back with Bill Lazar, Executive Director of the St. John's Housing Partnership. We're talking about the different services that SJHP offers, and we've talked about the rehab and the repairs and ramps that they work on, and also the counseling they offer. We're also talking now about the types of construction that St. John's Housing Partnership does and kind of some of the projects you've worked on in the past.
And you had asked, we do both single family and multifamily, but most of the multifamily we're doing is on the smaller end. It's 2 and 3 units. It's a quad complex. I'm a residential builder, so we work under my license, and we can build anything on our own up to 4 units. We're actually building a 6-unit apartment complex for at-risk veterans, so we're partnering with Flagler Hospital and their Care Connect program to help some of these vets who have been literally living in the woods or on their own, unable to find a place to live. And we're about 2/3 of the way through finishing that. It's a small 6-unit, 1-bedroom unit off Masters Drive. But those are the kind of things that we need to do more. We're looking at a huge building boom here. We're permitting over 600 new homes a month, but probably less than 1% of those are really addressing the need that our local workforce has. And when you look at the rising property values, the rising appraisals that are coming in, even the rental market is pricing the local workforce out. So our rentals, we own about 70 rentals around town, mostly single-family homes that we bought during the last recession that were in foreclosure, worked out a deal with a bank or something to be able to purchase them. And most of what we're renting is $100 or $200 below the current market. The problem is that we never have a vacancy, so if we advertise something, we'll get 50 applications in a day. There's that many people that are out there. And to your point about income, everybody talks about affordable housing, and then they always say, well, what's it affordable to whomever? And as you look at it, it's always based on sort of your gross household income and the number of people in your household. One person needs less space than someone who's got 3 kids. You can put 3 kids, some of us had bunk beds and 2 or 3 of us were in a bedroom. But you still got to have enough space for everybody. So it's always a function of that income. And when you get down to the service sector wages, the cost of rental the wages haven't kept up with the cost of rents for those folks. So we're seeing more and more people that are driving further. And as we all grouse about roads and traffic, and Mike was complaining about traffic on 207 getting in here this morning, I'm like, because that's our workforce coming in from Palatka or Flagler Estates or wherever they've been forced to move because they can't live close to jobs. And everybody's being impacted by that. I know Flagler Hospital has had the same challenges with nurses, and they pay nurses. You're talking about a much better wage scale than the service industry, but the nurses are saying, we're having a hard time. If you haven't sort of grown up here and have access to either family property or friends that you can rent or buy from, the whole idea of moving here and being part of the workforce that new employers need is really challenging.
It's really taking a toll on our local business community too. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, the service sectors, restaurants, retail, we're seeing businesses having to shutter their doors or reduce their operating hours because of the labor force. They can't get the labor force. That someone's not going to drive from 20 miles, 25 miles for the work. And then we also have a problem with, and I know the sheriff has mentioned, in recruiting law enforcement officers. In their recruiting package, when they talk to applicants, candidates to come work in St. Johns County, and I'm sure the same thing for first responders, the fire department, and teachers. I can't afford to live here.
Yeah.
So what can we do about that?
Well, and it's, it really is a function of a lot of different things. I mean, this is the same issue Sheriff Perry had 25 years ago when I moved here. He wanted his deputies living in county, and they were saying, boss, I can buy a house cheaper in Flagler or Putnam. And at a certain point, he had to open the range of where he allowed his deputies to live simply in order to keep people. The big challenge that I think we're going to run into for employers like our first responders is we will have a competitive wage scale. We'll pay people more to work here, and then they'll build up that sort of experience. They'll get 5 or 10 years under their belt, and then they'll go, well, I want to buy a home and I can't afford a $500,000 house, so I'll buy one in Palatka or Palm Coast or Duval. And then the next thing they know is they go, and I bet there's an employer closer to my job, and suddenly they go, oh, I'm going to work over here, and we're stuck with all the retraining costs. And I think that's the big thing that I think St. Johns County is going to start dealing with as we try and attract new industry, the sort of clean industry folks who pay more. You're literally talking about if I'm a new business coming here and I want to pay someone $60,000 a year to take that sort of mid-management position, I'm going to look around and say, they can't find a place to rent. And they certainly can't find a house to build, so what are they going to do? And do I really want to locate in St. Johns County? Yes, it's a wonderful place to live for lots of different reasons. But at a certain point, employers go, I want my people to show up on time. And in some cases, I need them in a hurry, and I can't have them commuting 45 minutes to get here. So I think that's going to be a growing issue. I've been talking to local employers who've actually said they're buying their own rental property to put their employees in. It's not a lot of them, because not a lot of them can afford to, but the ones that can have said, if that's how I stabilize, the chef at my restaurant, then that's what I'm going to do. It becomes a cost of business.
We rely so much on tourism, especially in the city of St. Augustine, and you have all these retail sectors and attractions and restaurants, then they have to have the workforce, and they just can't find a place to live.
Well, and I think, that's going to get even tougher. We've got, 2 new hotels going up now, and you figure when those hotels are up, they're going to want new employees. And so they're going to do one of 2 things. They're either going to raise the scale of what they pay, or they're going to try and entice an employee who's at a current location to move over to them for some other working in a newer place or whatever. You're not going to attract people for, less than 15 or 20 bucks an hour to commute 45 minutes to work at a hotel if they can find one closer. And restaurants are prevalent all over the place. Every restaurant probably in Florida could hire more people. So at a certain point, why are you going to travel from Palatka? There's great restaurants over there that someone can go work for. So we've got to take it seriously, and I think it really comes down to everybody's waiting for someone else to step up. I keep saying it's builders and developers that everybody say they've got to do it. You've got local government that has regulatory fees, whether impact fees, mobility fees, utility connection fees, or anything else, and it's banks. And if all 3 of them don't sort of say, okay, I'll give a little bit, it's not going to happen. We've got people talking about, can you do affordable housing inside these big tract home developments that have HOA and CDD fees? Those developments are existing in large part because local government has said, we're not going to pay for infrastructure, we want the developer. Everybody says, make the developer pay for it. They don't pay for anything. They just front end the cost and they pass it on to the end user. But if you buy a house and your mortgage is $2,000 a month, and then you've got a CDD fee of $500 a month or $300 a month, that has to be part of your housing cost. But it's not seen when someone says, well, what's the sales price? Well, sales price is only part of what it costs you to live in that community. But until we come up with a different way of looking at it, builders and developers are forced to say, well, if I've got to pay for all this, I've got to get my money back somehow, and that's where these CDDs and HOAs come from. The only time I've seen that done successfully is over in Eagle Harbor in Clay County. They did a big development there. They did 100 units of workforce housing about 15 years ago, but they put the workforce housing outside of the CDD district. It's right attached to it. It was all part of the same plan. They just said smartly, we're going to carve these people out because we know that we need these workers, and we know they can't handle the CDD fee. So it's a math problem, and they pass it on differently.
There needs to be more creativity at the local government level when it comes to affordable housing. There are funds available through the American Rescue Act, at least for the infrastructure, if nothing else.
Right.
So we need to get the county and the city governments looking at this, and how's the best way to go about that?
Well, I think we've got to just get everybody sitting down and saying, let's work together. The city has some land off of Holmes Boulevard. They've said they'd like to use it for workforce housing. It's in the county, so it's going to have county impact fees and utility connection fees. So there's got to be an acknowledgement that this is part of our economic future. Either we're going to address it now, or we're going to kick the can down the road, and then you're going to have businesses that can't stay open. So I think we really have to look at it like everybody's got to sit down, and we've got to implement things now. We can't sit here and say, well, let's come up with a plan that might work 5 years. I think if the county and the city set some goals and said we want so many units of affordable rental and affordable home ownership, then you could at least say what's working. Until we set goals, it's kind of hard to evaluate have we made any progress.
There's also an opportunity to donate property and land to the St. John's Housing Partnership as well as cash. And we'll wrap it up here.
Yep. The housing partnership is always looking. I mean, the real estate market is, it's going crazy right now. But I just tell people, look, if you're going to sell a house you inherited or land that you've owned, if you're going to sell it, before you sell it to an investor, give us a shot at buying it. We have to pay you, fair market price, so we'll get an appraisal, but we can at least sit there and give us a chance to buy it first and keep it local.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.